I woke up on my birthday at 6 o'clock, as I always had. 77 years. A number that might have meant something once, but now it was just a marker, a reminder that time keeps moving whether you pay attention or not. Since Margaret passed, the days had stretched and blurred. 5 years without her felt like a lifetime compressed into a single ache. The mornings had lost their shape, their light dulled, and yet some habits remained stubbornly comforting. I went through my ritual, without thinking. Coffee, black, toast with peanut butter. My pills, organized in the plastic container with the days of the week clearly marked. Margaret had insisted on it a year before she died. "Orrin, you're getting forgetful," she had said. I wasn't forgetful. I just didn't care as much about some things anymore. The house creaked with me, its old bones complaining as if echoing my own age. Upstairs, the 3 bedrooms sat empty, silent witnesses to children who had flown the nest years ago. Dwight and Lorraine had moved on, leaving me alone in the home Margaret and I had built together, a house that had grown with our lives. Every beam, every nail, every rough edge carried memory. I wandered to the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard. The apple tree Margaret and I had planted the year Dwight was born leaned under the weight of its fruit. 52 years of growth, of seasons never missed, never failing. Unlike my son. The morning silence broke with a phone call. "Daddy, happy birthday." Lorraine's voice was bright, far too bright for 9 o'clock. "Dwight and I are coming over at 2 today. Let's celebrate your big day." I couldn't remember the last time they had come together. Probably Margaret's funeral. "Thank you, Lorraine. I'll be here," I said quietly. "Oh, I'll bring my apple pie," she added. "Your favorite?" "Blueberry." Margaret had always known that. Lorraine did not. "Sounds wonderful," I replied, and hung up. Before noon, a text arrived from Dwight. "Don't cook anything. We're bringing lunch." I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Suspicion. The last time Dwight had shown concern was when he asked for money for his second failed business, a sporting goods store that lasted 6 months and vanished with the cash. Dwight had inherited my height, my broad shoulders, but none of the practicality. My father had been a plumber. I'd started as a carpenter's apprentice and built a construction company from the ground up. Dwight had a business degree and considered hard work beneath him. "Times are changing, Dad," he used to say. "Times change. Money doesn't. You either have it or you don't." Lorraine, on the other hand, had always known exactly what she wanted. Calculating from childhood, married to Nolan Prescott, an ambitious surgeon, living in Bow-Hour's upscale neighborhood with 2 children, a pool, and a country club membership. Still, it wasn't enough. She needed to climb higher, breach invisible barriers her husband could not. At 2 hours and 5 minutes past noon, I spotted them pulling up. Lorraine's sleek black SUV, Dwight's worn sedan trailing behind. From the kitchen window, I watched. Dwight looked tense, his once pristine suit now wrinkled and dull. Lorraine, perfectly coiffed, in a fitted dress, pearls, and low heels, guided Nolan as he helped unload food. My grandchildren stayed home. "School projects," Lorraine said later. I knew it was a lie. There were no projects in the middle of summer. Lorraine enveloped me in a hug, leaving a trail of expensive perfume. "You look amazing for your age," she said. That last phrase clung with meaning, a compliment disguised as a reminder of how old I was. Dwight patted my shoulder, a heavy, sloppy hand that smelled of whiskey. "Happy birthday, old man." I walked them into the living room, past the shelves where Margaret had once arranged her porcelain figurines. Since her death, they had been boxed away, hidden under dust and memory. "We brought your favorite fried chicken from Southern Kitchen," Lorraine said, arranging containers on the table. "I never liked that diner. Margaret's fried chicken had been unmatched." Dwight opened a box of chocolate cake. And cake from Mildred's bakery. I'm diabetic, I said quietly. Been 10 years. Lorraine's face didn't change, but Nolan's did. Genuine embarrassment flickered over his features. He wasn't a bad man, just weak. Lorraine had chosen him the way someone chooses a purebred dog. Pedigree, obedience, no surprises. We sat. Dwight poured wine for everyone except me. You can't have any with your meds, right, Dad? He asked. I remembered. I could, but he didn't want the expensive wine wasted on an old man. Lunch passed with awkward pauses and forced smiles. Lorraine spoke of her charity committee. Dwight bragged about his new Italian furniture import business. I nodded, quiet. Then came the signal, a glance between brother and sister. Dad, Lorraine said, lips blotting with a napkin, we need to talk to you about something important. I put down my fork. Here it comes. We're worried about you, she began. Living alone, forgetting your medication. I don't forget my medicine, I interrupted. Dwight stepped in. Remember last month when Mrs. Finch found your blood pressure pills in the mailbox? I explained calmly. I'd placed them there while reading a letter, distracted by the phone. A simple mistake, nothing more. Lorraine's cold fingers touched mine. The house needs constant maintenance. The roof leaks. The porch steps are wobbly. What if you fall? I looked at Dwight, who was staring at his fingernails. What's your point? They exchanged another glance. Dwight spoke. We found a great place, Bower Pines. It's not a regular nursing home, your own apartment, 24-hour nursing care, communal dining, activities. I'm not moving into a nursing home, I said. Don't call it that, Dad, Lorraine huffed. It's an active retirement community, she insisted. George Hammond lives there. Remember him? Your old accountant? I'm not George, I said, and I'm fine here. Dad, be reasonable. Dwight raised his voice. This house is too big, too old. You'd get good money if you sold it. Money. Always money. What about the house? I asked. There are buyers interested, Dwight replied too quickly. I remembered Margaret planting roses along the path. The girls running under sprinklers on hot summer days, evenings on the veranda, crickets singing, planning futures. No, I said. This is my home. I'm staying. Lorraine's face stiffened. Dwight's jaw clenched. We're worried about your safety, Lorraine said. What if something happens? I looked at them. Same thing that happens to everyone. I'll die. But in my home, not among strangers. That's selfish, Dwight blurted. You're only thinking about yourself. What about us? I could barely hold back a laugh. When was the last time they worried about me? Once a month? Less? When you came just for fun, not for parties, not for money, when did you ever worry? Silence. Nolan studied his plate. It's not fair, Lorraine said. We all have our own lives, kids, business, we can't visit every day. I'm not asking for every day, I replied. Maybe more than once every 6 months. Dinner ended in silence. Lorraine clattered dishes. Dwight went out to smoke, old habit resurfacing. I walked them to the door. Think about our offer, Dad, Dwight said. It's for your own good. I watched them drive away and thought about how things had changed. When Margaret was alive, they came more often. Not for me, for her. She was the center, the sun around which the family orbited. Without her, the orbits broke. I returned to the house and sat in my chair. Unopened greeting cards from the children lay on the table. Inside I knew would be the standard wishes and signatures. Not a word about what was really going on in their lives. And there was a lot going on. I knew more than they realized. Dwight's problems with creditors, his latest business on the verge of bankruptcy, about Lorraine trying desperately to make her way into Bower's high society. But the old money wouldn't take her in despite all the fundraisers and club memberships. I didn't know this because they told me. The small town of Bowers kept few secrets from those who knew how to listen. And I did. And I also knew something my children didn't. Silent investments made decades ago. Companies registered to shell companies. Real estate bought through third parties. Margaret understood. "Why all this complexity, Orrin?" she asked. "To see people for who they are," I answered. If Dwight and Lorraine had known the real extent of my fortune, they would never have shown their true faces. I went up to the second floor to the small room Margaret called my office. There, in an old safe behind a painting, were stored documents, evidence that humble builder Orrin Caldwell was far from as simple as he seemed. Today's conversation was no surprise to me. I'd been expecting something like this ever since I'd noticed Dwight looking around the house on his last visit, pricing it not as a family legacy, but as an asset. I wasn't mad at my kids. I was disappointed. Disappointed that money meant more to them than family. That the house they grew up in was just real estate for them to sell. That their elderly father had become a burden to be rid of. Looking at the old pictures on the wall, Margaret and the kids at the beach, the first day of Lorraine High School, Dwight with a baseball bat. I wondered where we'd taken a wrong turn. What had I done wrong in raising them? Maybe I worked too hard. Maybe I'd given them too much. Or conversely, too little. Margaret was a better judge of these matters. Children need more than a roof over their heads and food on the table, she said. They need your time. I didn't give much time. There was always work, projects, deadlines. I was building houses for other people. And I left my own home unattended. And this is the result. But it's not too late to teach my kids a lesson. Probably the last lesson I'll ever be able to teach them. A lesson about values, about consequences, about what's really important in life. I pulled out of the safe a file on an apartment building in downtown Bowers. The house where Dwight had been living in a rented apartment since his ex-wife kicked him out of their shared home. The house where Nolan Prescott, Lorraine's husband, had a clinic office on the top floor. The building was owned by a company called Margaret Investments. I named it after my wife, but neither Dwight nor Lorraine had ever associated the company with me. They didn't even know it existed. I ran me fingers over the documents, pondering the next step. Not about revenge, about justice, about one last lesson that could change my children for the better if it wasn't too late. A phone call interrupted my musings. Grandpa. It was Meredith, Dwight's daughter. Happy birthday. I'm sorry I didn't come. Of all the grandchildren, Meredith was the only one who ever really visited me. Not often. Her father didn't approve of ooshanging out, but sincerely. Thank you, Meredith. How are you doing? I'm good. Dad said you two were fighting about the house. News travels fast in Bowers. Not really a fight, just a disagreement. He wants you to move to the Pines. Yes, don't do it, Grandpa, she said seriously. You won't like it there. Gemma volunteers there. She says it's a terrible place despite the pretty brochures. Gemma was Meredith's friend, smart girl studying social work. Don't worry, I replied. I'm not going anywhere. After talking to Meredith, I sat in the chair for a long time, staring out the window at the setting sun. A plan began to form in my head. A plan that would take time, patience, and the help of a few trusted friends. I picked up my cell phone and dialed a number. Ted, it's Orrin. I need your help. Theodore Lockett had been my lawyer and friend for over 40 years. He knew everything about my affairs, including the existence of Margaret Investments and other companies. What's wrong, Warren? He asked. It's time to put Plan B into action, I said. The kids want to evict me. After talking to the kids on my birthday, there was a lull. Lorraine called 3 days later, her voice tense as a string. Dad, have you thought about our offer? Yes, I answered. My decision hadn't changed. There was a pause. I could almost physically feel her irritation, seeping through the phone line. Okay, she said finally, but promised to at least think about it again. We care about you. That was the end of the conversation. Dwight didn't call at all. 2 weeks went by like that. I continued to live my normal life. Breakfast at 6 mile in the morning, a walk to the post office, reading the newspaper on the veranda, an occasional game of chess with Ted Lockett in the park. On Thursday, exactly 3 weeks after my birthday, I went out for my usual morning walk. Thesky was clear, the air fresh from the night's rain. I took my standard route through the park, past the old library, to the Stamford Bakery for fresh bread. Myra Stamford, the owner of the bakery, saved a loaf of rye for me every Thursday. "Orrin, there was a call for you," Myra said when I came in. "Your daughter looking for you." I frowned. Lorraine never called the bakery. She didn't even know about my habit of coming here on Thursdays. Went about 20 minutes ago. Said she couldn't reach you at home. That's weird. I didn't turn my phone off. What else did she say? Nothing much. She asked if you'd stop by and told me to tell you to call her when you could. I nodded, picked up my bread, and walked out of the bakery thinking, why was Lorraine looking for me? And why was she calling the bakery? Deciding not to pursue that question too long, I headed to the phone booth on the street corner and dialed Lorraine's number. Nolan answered, "Orrin?" His voice sounded strange. "Where are you? In town? Was Lorraine looking for me?" "Yes," she stammered. "I think you'd better talk to her." There was a rustle in the phone, then Lorraine's voice. "Daddy, thank God." She sounded like she was crying. "Where are you?" "Downtown." "What happened, Lorraine?" "It's your house, Daddy. It's, on fire." I felt the ground slipping from under my feet. "The house. Margaret and I's house. What do you mean it's on fire? The fire department's already there, but, Her voice broke. "It's bad, Daddy. It's really bad." "I'm on my way," I said and hung up. It was a 20-minute walk home, but I made it in 15, despite my 77 years. As I turned onto my street, I saw puffs of smoke rising into the sky. 3 fire trucks, a police patrol car, and an ambulance stood in front of my house. A crowd of neighbors had gathered at a safe distance. But most importantly, I saw the flames, furious, ravenous, devouring the roof of the house I had built with my own hands. The house where my children were born and raised. The house where Margaret died. I froze for a moment, feeling strangely calm. Somewhere on the edge of my consciousness, the thought flashed. Too convenient. Too convenient that the fire happened right now when the kids were insisting on selling the house. Too convenient that Lorraine wasn't looking for me at home, but at the bakery I went to on Thursdays. Too convenient that this Thursday was the only day of the week that Mrs. Finch's neighbor wasn't home. Her daughter took her every Thursday for the day. "Daddy." Lorraine rushed to me, her face wet with tears. Behind her was Dwight, pale with a lost look on his face. "We thought we were afraid." She didn't finish her sentence, but I understood. They thought I was inside. They were afraid I was dead. Or were they hoping? "I was in town," I said. "What happened?" "We don't know," Dwight said. "I came by to check on you. Saw the smoke." I called 911, then Lorraine. The fire department said it might be wiring. The house is sold. I had the wiring completely replaced 5 years ago after Margaret died. New copper wire. Modern switches. Overload protection. I hired the electricians myself and checked every detail. "Where did the fire start?" I asked. "In your bedroom, I think," Lorraine answered. "Or next to it. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor. It was also where my office with the safe was. Coincidence?" A fireman approached us. A tall man with a tired face. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm Captain Jennings. I'm afraid the news isn't good." "I can see that," I replied, staring at the fire burning through the roof of the house. The fire started on the 2nd floor. In the back bedroom area, it spread very quickly. "We're doing everything we can, but the house probably can't be saved." I nodded, feeling strangely numb. 5 years of life, memories, labor, all disappearing in the fire. "Any guesses as to the cause?" I asked. The captain hesitated. It's too early to say. We'll investigate when the fire is out. But there was a call from your son that you might be inside. We did as much of a search as we could. As you can see, I'm here, I said. Yes, that's good. The captain nodded. Do you have a place to stay for the near future? Before I could answer, Lorraine intervened. He's coming with me. We've already decided everything. I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were red with tears, but there was something else in them. Relief, determination. 3 hours later, the fire was out, but all that was left of the house was a charred frame. The roof collapsed, the walls blackened with soot. My whole life was reduced to ashes. Let's go, Dad, Lorraine said softly, taking me under her arm. There's nothing more to do here. I let her lead me to the car. Dwight sat behind the wheel, Lorraine in the back seat next to me. All the way to her house, she held my hand like she was afraid I'd disappear. At dinner, Dwight and Lorraine were unusually thoughtful. Lorraine cooked my favorite roast beef, a dish she had never made before. Dwight opened a bottle of good whiskey and poured me one without saying a word about the high medication. Dad, we have to talk about the future. Lorraine began when we finished eating. The future? The house. It's destroyed. It'll take months to rebuild if it can be rebuilt at all, and the insurance company might not cover everything completely given the age of the building. I've thought about that, I said. We'll see what the insurance company says. But even if they do, Dwight interjected, you have to think about whether it's worth rebuilding. Maybe it's a sign that it's time to move on. A sign? I raised an eyebrow. Do you believe in signs now, Dwight? He averted his eyes. You know what I mean? You could have used the insurance money to settle in at Bowhours Pines. Lorraine and I talked to the management. They've got a great apartment opening up overlooking the park. How convenient, and how quickly they got it all organized. I'm not ready to make that kind of decision yet, I said. I need to deal with the aftermath of the fire first. Of course, Dad. Lorraine stroked my hand. We just want you to know that you have options and we're here for you. There was so much fake concern in her voice that I barely restrained myself from laughing in her face. Instead, I nodded and took a sip off whiskey. 2 days later, the results of the preliminary fire investigation came in. Captain Jennings had personally brought them to the Lorraine house. Mr. Caldwell, he handed me a folder. Here's our report. Not good news, I'm afraid. I opened the folder and looked through the documents. What caught my eye was the phrase probable cause. Faulty electrical wiring in the wall between the bedroom and the study. Like I said, the wiring was completely replaced 5 years ago, I pointed out. The captain nodded. We've taken that into account, but even new wiring can be improperly installed or damaged by rodents. We found signs of melting in this particular area. And noticed that Lorraine and Dwight exchanged quick glances. I see, I said. Thanks for your work. When Jennings left, Lorraine sat down next to me. See, Dad? It was just an accident. No one could have seen it coming. Yeah, I agreed. No one could have. Dwight cleared his throat. Dad, Lorraine, and I were thinking, maybe you should at least watch the pines. No strings attached, just to look around. I looked at my kids. They were clearly nervous, waiting for my answer. Okay, I said finally. Let's go and have a look around. The relief on their faces was almost palpable. Bowhours Pines was exactly what I'd expected. A sterile complex with smiling staff and faceless apartments. Mrs. Ross, the director, gave us a tour with a practice speech about comfort and safety. I pretended. To be impressed, asked the right questions, and eventually agreed to put down a deposit on an apartment. A week after the fire, I moved into Bowhours Pines. Lorraine and Dwight helped me get settled in, bought new clothes to replace the ones that had burned, and brought some personal items that had been stored at Ted's. They were unusually attentive and caring. The day we moved in, Lorraine brought me a stack of papers. Dad, these are from the insurance company. They've agreed to pay for the house, but it's less than we expected. Something to do with depreciation and old wiring. I went through the paperwork. The amount was indeed below the market value of the house, but still significant. And another thing, Lorraine continued, holding out another folder to me. These are the papers for you to live here. You need to sign a contract and a few other papers. I opened the folder and began to read. A standard nursing home contract and a separate document, a power of attorney to manage your finances. What's that for? I asked, pointing to the power of attorney. It's standard procedure, Dad, Lorraine explained. The Pines require someone to be responsible for paying for your living expenses just in case you... Well, you can't manage your own finances. I'm still sane, Lorraine. Of course you are, Daddy. No one's saying otherwise. It's just a formality. I signed the living arrangements, but I put off the power of attorney. I need to discuss it with Ted. He's always helped me with legal matters. Lorraine frowned but nodded. Of course, Dad, of course. But don't take too long. The administration needs all the paperwork. When the kids left, I sat back in my chair and stared out the window for a long time. Their plan was obvious. Set the house on fire. Get me to move to the Pines. Get control of my finances. They didn't know that I had guessed their intentions. They didn't know that the key documents were safe with Ted. And they absolutely did not know about Margaret Investments and my other assets. The next day, I met Willow Tanner, the young social worker at the Pines. Unlike the rest of the staff, she didn't speak to me condescendingly or use that special tone that people save for young children and the elderly. Mr. Caldwell. She took a seat next to me in the common room. How are you settling in? Not bad, I answered. The food could be better, though. She laughed sincerely, not out of politeness. I couldn't agree more. I myself prefer to eat at the cafe across the street. We talked some more. She was intelligent and observant. Rare qualities in this place. As she was leaving, I asked, Miss Tanner, do you happen to know Gemma? She's a social worker, too, a friend of my granddaughter's. Willow raised her eyebrows, in surprise. Gemma Parker? Yeah, we went to school together. She volunteers here sometimes. Small world? I smiled. Indeed. She paused. Mr. Caldwell, if you need anything, feel free to contact me. I'm here every day from 9 to 5. When she left, I pulled out my cell phone and called Ted. What's the situation? He asked. Everything's going according to plan, I replied. The kids bought it. They think I'm a helpless old man they can fool around with. Did they try to get power of attorney? Yeah, today. I said I wanted to discuss it with you. That's smart. Gives us time. Ted, I need your help. It's time to put the next part of the plan in motion. Are you sure, Orrin? It's a drastic step. I looked out the window at the manicured lawn of Bowers Pines, where nurses walk the elderly like children in a daycare center. Absolutely, I replied. My children need to learn what it means to be homeless, what it means to lose everything in one day. Maybe it will teach them to appreciate what they have. Ted sighed. Okay, I'll get the paperwork ready. The eviction notices will be ready by next week. Great, I said. And Ted, thank you. You're a true friend. You're welcome, Orrin. By the way, your granddaughter Meredith called me. She's worried about you. Meredith is the only one in the family who's inherited Margaret's common sense. I smiled. Tell her I'm fine, and that the fun is about to begin. I finished talking and leaned back in my chair, feeling more energized than I had in years. For the first week at Bowers Pines, I played the part of the beautiful old man. Attended a group art class, even though I'd never been able to hold a paintbrush. Played bingo with the other residents, patiently listening to their endless stories of grandchildren and illness. Ate bland food in the common dining room, thanking the nurses for pills I didn't need. Lorraine visited me every other day, bringing me homemade baked goods and magazines. Dwight stopped by twice, each time with new documents that needed to be signed. Right away. I kept putting it off, citing headaches or the need to consult with Ted. Dad, it's just a formality, Dwight said, barely concealing his irritation. Why do you have to make everything so complicated? You can't rush decisions at my age, I replied, enjoying the way his face reamed with anger. You don't want me to sign something without understanding it, do you? My stubbornness was pissing him off. Dwight had always been impatient. As a child, he wanted everything. New toys, treats, attention. Margaret tried to teach him patience, but to no avail. In business, this character trait turned against him. He took on projects without calculating the risks, invested money in dubious enterprises, expecting an instant return. Lorraine was different, calculating, methodical. She could wait years to get what she wanted. That's why I was sure the Hussir was her idea, not Dwight's. He would give himself away. She never would. On Thursday, the 10th day of my stay at the Pines, there was a knock at my room. Mr. Caldwell, Willow Tanner, was standing in the doorway with a file folder. I'm on routine rounds. May I come in? Of course, Miss Tanner. I pointed to the chair across. The hall. Have a seat. She sat down, opened the file, and took out a pen. How are you feeling? Adapting to the new place. As much as possible, I answered. The food could be better, but I'm not picky. She smiled and made a note in the papers. And how's the sleep? Trouble falling asleep? Nightmares? No, nothing like that. That's good. She closed the folder. You know, Mr. Caldwell, a lot of new residents have trouble adjusting, especially those who've had traumatic experiences like you and the fire. I shrugged my shoulders. A house is just a building. It's the people that matter, not the walls. She looked at me carefully. That's a very mature look. Not everyone feels that way about losing their home, especially if they've lived there for decades. Maybe I'm just good at hiding my feelings. I smiled. Maybe. She paused. Mr. Caldwell, I was wondering. You mentioned Gemma, your granddaughter's friend. Did she really tell you about the Pines? That's an interesting question. Checking up on me? Yeah. Through Meredith. My granddaughter visits me sometimes, and one day she brought Gemma. Nice girl. She mentioned that she volunteers here. Willow nodded. I was just talking to her yesterday, and she was surprised to hear you were here. Said the Pines was the last place she expected to see. You looked at Willow with renewed interest. Why is she telling me this? Why? Gemma said that you always seemed to her independent, not the type to go easy on your family. Now I get it. Willow was smarter than she looked. Sometimes a man doesn't have a choice, I said carefully, especially when their house burns to the ground. She met my gaze. There's always a choice, Mr. Caldwell. Always. I saw understanding in her eyes. She knew there was something wrong with my story, that I wasn't just a helpless old man in difficult circumstances. You're right, Miss Tanner. I lowered my voice. There are always choices, and I've made mine. May I ask which one? I shouldn't have trusted her. I shouldn't have revealed my cards. But something in her direct gaze, in her genuine interest, compelled me to continue, the choice to watch and wait. You see, Miss Tanner, I've long suspected that my children are not as caring as they want to appear. The fire only confirmed my fears. You don't think the fire was an accident? She stepped forward. Let's just say there were too many coincidences. What do you plan to do? Get justice, he answered. But I need help, someone inside the Pines I could trust. Willow looked at me for a long moment as if assessing me. I've worked here for 3 years, Mr. Caldwell, and I've seen enough cases where families have not acted in the best interests of their elderly relatives. If you've been the victim of something like that, I'd like to help. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. She shrugged. And because Gemma spoke of you as a good person, and I trust her judgment. I nodded. I need you to help me with a few things. 1, set up a meeting with my attorney, Ted Lockett, without the administration knowing. 2, to allow my granddaughter Meredith to visit me without her father finding out. The first one isn't hard, Willow said. Visitors can come during visiting hours and no one checks who they are. As for your granddaughter, I can meet her at the side entrance and take her through the staff area. There are no cameras. Thank you, Miss Tanner. Willow, please. She smiled. If we're going to be part of a secret conspiracy, let's at least address each other by our first names. Okay, Willow? I smiled, too. Call me Orrin, then. The next day, Ted came to see me as arranged. Willow led him through the service entrance and left us alone in the small counseling room. Orrin. Ted shook my hand firmly. How are you holding up? Better than they think. I pointed to a chair. Sit down. We don't have much time. Ted took a folder of documents out of his briefcase. I've got everything you asked for. The eviction notices are ready to go. All in need is your signature. I took the documents and looked through them. Everything was exactly the way I wanted it. That's great, Ted. When can you send them out? Tomorrow. But Orrin, are you sure you want to go that far? They're your kids no matter what. I put the papers aside and looked at my old friend. They stopped being my children the moment they decided they could burn down the house I built with my own hands. The house where they themselves had grown up. The house where their mother died. Ted sighed. I understand your pain. But there are other ways to punish them without throwing them out on the street. This isn't about punishment, Ted. It's about the lesson. They need to understand what it's like to be homeless, to feel what they think I should have felt. What about Nolan and the grandkids? They'd suffer too, I wondered. Nolan, Lorraine's husband, was a weak man, but not evil. And the children, they're not to blame for their parents' sins. I have a plan for them too. Nolan can keep his practice. And as for the grandchildren, I'll leave them a separate inheritance through a trust. But Dwight and Lorraine have to feel the consequences of their actions. Ted shook his head, but picked up the pen and handed it to me. It's your decision, Orrin. I'll support you whatever you choose. I signed the papers and handed them back to Ted. Thank you, friend. Now, on to other business. How are things going with Margaret Investments? It's all good. The company still owns the building on Maple Street where Dwight has his apartment and the office center on Oak Avenue where Nolan's practice is, plus 3 more commercial properties in Bowers and 2 in neighboring Ridgewood. The tenants are paying their rent. Yeah, no problem. The company's accounts are funded every month. I nodded, satisfied. Margaret Investments was my most successful venture. The company, named after my wife, owned much of the commercial real estate in Bowers. I started it 30 years ago when I realized the city was going to grow. I bought abandoned buildings, restored them, and rented them out. Things went so well that soon I was able to buy properties in neighboring towns as well. Neither Dwight nor Lorraine knew this company existed. To them, he was just a builder, retired with a comfortable but not luxurious fortune. They didn't realize I was one of the largest landowners in the county. What about insurance for the house? I asked. The company has launched an investigation. They suspect arson. I smiled. Not surprising. Dwight had never been particularly smart about that sort of thing. If they proved arson, there would be no payout and there could be trouble with the police. I wasn't counting on that money, I said. But if it goes to the police, well, that's their problem, not mine. Ted looked at me carefully. Orrin, I've known you for almost 50 years. You've never been a vindictive person. What's changed? It turned away to the window, looking out at the neatly trimmed lawn of Bowers Pines. Margaret had always been a buffer between me and the kids. She smoothed out the sharp edges, protected them from my bluntness, and me from their selfishness. When she died, that protection disappeared, and I saw my children for what they really were. Greedy, calculating, willing to step over their own. Father for money. Maybe you're being too hard on them. Ted, they burned down my house. I turned to him. The house where they grew up, where they kept their mother's pictures, her personal belongings, our memories. They destroyed it all for money. How can I be lenient with them? Ted couldn't find anything to say. There's something else, I continued. I want to rewrite the will, eliminate Dwight and Lorraine completely. And who will you leave the inheritance to? Part of it to Meredith. She's the only one in the family who really cared about me. Part to charity, the Bowers Senior Citizens Fund, and a portion to the city to build a new community center. Let them know that Orrin Caldwell wasn't just a grumpy old man. Ted nodded. I'll draw up the paperwork, but we'll need a notary for that. Willow might be able to help. She knows someone who could come here unofficially. Are you sure you can trust her? No, I answered honestly, but I don't have a choice and she seems sincere. Okay. Ted gathered the documents in his briefcase. I'll send out the eviction notices on Monday. That'll give us the weekend to get everything ready. Thank you, Ted, for everything. After he left, I sat in the chair for a long time, thinking about what I'd done. Part of me had doubts. After all, they're my kids, whatever they are. But the other part, the stronger part, demanded justice. They needed to learn a lesson they would remember for the rest of their lives. On Saturday, Willow brought Meredith to me. My granddaughter looked worried. Pale face, dark circles under her eyes. Grandpa, she rushed over to hug me. How are you? Daddy won't let me visit you. He says you need time to adjust. I'm fine, Meredith. I pointed to the chair. Sit down. We need to talk. Willow discreetly walked out, leaving us alone. What's going on, Grandpa? Meredith asked when we were alone. The fire you moving here? It all happened so fast, too fast. I agreed. Don't you think? She frowned. I talked to Gemma. She said that fire's like this. Well, they're not always accidental. Smart girl, just like her grandmother. So, what do you think? I don't know what to think. She shook her head. I mean, it's impossible, isn't it? Daddy and Aunt Lorraine couldn't burn down my house. I finished for her. Why not? Your father's on the verge of bankruptcy. His last business failed. Creditors are, demanding repayment. And Lorraine's desperate to break into Bowers' high society. It takes money, more money than Nolan makes. How do you know about Daddy's business? Bowers is a small town, Meredith. People talk and I'm a good listener. She looked at me with her eyes wide open. But still, setting a house on fire, that's a crime. Greed makes people do terrible things. I took her hand. But that's not why I called you here. I need your help. What kind of help? In the next few days, your father and aunt will receive certain news. They'll be shocked and angry. Perhaps they'll come here to make a scene. What news? Eviction. You see, Meredith, I own the building where your father lives and the building where Nolan's clinic is. She looked at me stunned. How? Dad always said you put all your money into your house and small savings. Your father only knows what I let him know. I smiled. I have a company, Margaret Investments, named after your grandmother. That company owns a lot of real estate in Bowers, including the buildings where your father and Aunt Lorraine live. And you're going to evict them? Meredith shook her head. Grandpa, that's cruel. No more cruel than burning down your father's house, I pointed out. They need to learn a lesson, Meredith. What it's like to be homeless overnight. She was silent for a long time, digesting the information. What can I do to help? She finally asked. I need eyes and ears in the family. When your father gets the notice, he'll be furious. I want to know what he'll do, what he'll talk to Lorraine about. You're asking me to spy on my dad. I'm asking you to help me protect myself, I corrected. Your father and aunt think I'm a helpless old man who can be manipulated. I want to show them that they're wrong. Meredith was silent again, looking down at the floor. I don't know, Grandpa. It's complicated. He is my father after all. A father who was willing to burn down his own father's house. I reminded her. Think about it, Meredith. One more thing. I'm rewriting my will. Everything I own will be divided between you, the charity, and the town of Bowers. She raised her head. I don't want your money, Grandpa. I know. That's why you're going to get it. Unlike your father, you've never been greedy. Meredith sighed. Okay, I'll help. But not because you promised me an inheritance. It's because if Dad really burned down your house, he should be held accountable. Thank you, Meredith. I squeezed her hand. You look just like your grandmother. She would have been proud of you. After Meredith left, I sat by the window, watching the residents of Bowers Pines walking around the grounds. Many of them were younger than me, but looked older, hunched over, eyes droopy. They had given up, let their families decide for them. I wasn't going to be like that. Willow came by tonight. Everything okay, Orrin? She asked, taking a seat next to me. Yeah, thanks for your help. With Meredith. You're welcome. She paused. Do you mind if I ask what you're planning? I looked at Thea. There was something about this young woman that inspired confidence. I'm going to teach my children a lesson. Show them what it means to lose a home overnight. How so? I own the buildings where they live through a company they don't know exists. Willow whistled. That's impressive. And you're going to evict them? Yes. Notices will be sent out on Monday. But why? She frowned. Couldn't you just, I don't know, talk to them? Explain what you know about the fire. Willow, my kids aren't the type to learn from words. They need action, consequences. They need to feel what they think I should feel. Helplessness, loss of control over their lives. That's a radical. Sometimes only drastic measures can get through to people. I shrugged, especially stubborn ones like my kids. And then what? After the eviction? That's a good question. I've often thought about it myself. It would depend on them, how they react. If they realize their mistake, admit their guilt, maybe I'll soften. If they continue to insist, to deny the obvious, well, then they'll get what they deserve. Willow shook her head. Sounds like a script for a drama. Life is sometimes more dramatic than any script, I pointed out, especially when it comes to family and money. Aren't you scared? She asked suddenly. That after this, you'll lose them forever. I wondered. You know, Willow, I've already lost them. The moment they decided that my money was more important than I was. Maybe it was even before that when Margaret died. She was the glue that held our family together. And yet they are your children. Yes, I agreed. And that's why I have to teach them this lesson. Parents teach their children until the day they die, Willow, even when they're in their 50s. She smiled. You're an amazing man, Orrin Caldwell. Just an old man who's tired of lying. I shrugged. But thanks for the compliment. When Willow left, I pulled Margaret's picture out of the nightstand. The only one that had survived because it was in Ted's possession. It was taken on our silver wedding day 25 years ago. Margaret laughed as she looked into the camera, her eyes shining. What would you say, darling? I whispered, looking at the photo. Am I doing the right thing? Margaret had always been kinder than me, gentler. She would probably have forgiven. The children found an excuse for what they had done, but Margaret didn't see what they were like after she died. She didn't see the cold calculation in Lorraine's eyes, Dwight's desperate greed. I tucked the photograph back into the nightstand and lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. The plan was set in motion, the machine in motion. On Monday, Ted would send eviction notices and my children's lives would change forever. They would learn what it meant to lose everything in an instant. They'll learn that their father isn't as simple as they thought. It will be a brutal lesson, but a necessary one. Monday morning, Ted mailed the eviction notices. I knew it wouldn't take long, and I was right. By lunchtime, my phone was ringing off the hook. Dwight called first, his voice shaking with rage. Dad, you won't believe what happened. Some company called Margaret Investments sent me an eviction notice. I only have 30 days to vacate the apartment. There's been a mistake. I acted surprised. Margaret Investments? I've never heard of that company. Why are they evicting you? Something about a change of ownership and the termination of all leases. I called the building manager. He said, It's true. The building's been sold, but I've been paying my rent faithfully. They have no right. It's unpleasant, Dwight, I said calmly, but I think you should consult a lawyer. I don't know much about this kind of thing. I already called my lawyer. He said that if the company is really the new owner, they have the right to terminate the contract, provided they give me advance notice. What should I do, Dad? I can't find a new apartment in 30 days, especially with my credit history. Maybe you could stay with Lorraine temporarily. I suggested it. She's in the same situation, Dwight exclaimed. The same company owns the building, where Nolan's clinic is. They got an eviction notice, too. I allowed myself a small smile. It was exactly their action I'd expected. What a coincidence, I said. You both received notices on the same day. There must be some mistake, Dwight insisted. Or a conspiracy. Someone is trying to run us out of town or just business, I said. Companies buy and sell real estate every day. Yeah, but why now? And why us? Dwight's voice sounded almost pitiful. Dad, I don't have the money to move. My last project fell through and I'm barely making ends meet. I'm sorry, Dwight, I said sincerely. Maybe you could talk to the new owners. Explain the situation. I've tried. No one answers the phone. Just an answering machine. Of course, Noon answered. Margaret Investments' phone was set to automatically pick up messages. Ted checked it every day. Dad, I need money. Can you help? Here it is. I've been waiting for this question. Dwight, you know, I have almost nothing left after the fire. All. My savings went to pay for the Pines. But the insurance, it hasn't been paid yet. The insurance company is investigating. There was a pause. I could almost physically feel Dwight's brain working through his options. Dad, I really need help, he said, finally. I know Lorraine and I insisted you move to the Pines, but maybe that was a mistake. Maybe you should move in with me. That way, you can save money on the Pines and I can get help with the rent. That's thoughtful. Just now, when he needs money, he suddenly thinks I can live on my own. Dwight, you have a studio apartment. Where am I going to sleep? We'll figure something out, he insisted. The important thing is that we're together. A family should support each other in difficult times. I wonder where that philosophy was when my house was burning down. An hour later, Lorraine called. Her voice was icy, controlled, typical Lorraine. Even in a crisis, keeping up the facade. Daddy, did you hear the news? She asked without preamble. What news? About me and Dwight. Some company is evicting both of us. Dwight out of his apartment and Nolan out of his office. Yeah, Dwight called. That's terrible, Lorraine. What are you going to do about it? We hired a lawyer. It can't be a coincidence we both got notices on the same day. Someone is targeting our family on purpose, or it's just business. I repeated the same thought to Dwight. No, Dad. Her voice sounded confident. It's personal. The company's called Margaret Investments. Margaret is Mom's name. It can't be a coincidence. Lorraine had always been observant and more perceptive than Dwight. What do you mean? I don't know. She sighed. Could it be? Someone who knew Mom? Someone who has a reason to take revenge on our family? Margaret died 5 years ago, I pointed out. Why would someone wait that long? I don't know. The irritation in her voice finally broke through. But I'll find out. Nolan can't lose his clinic, Dad. He's worked for years to build a reputation. If he has to move, he'll lose patience. Maybe you can negotiate with the new owners. I suggested it. Explain the situation. We're trying, but no one's answering the phone. And the company's address is a mailbox at a law firm in Ridgewood. Which firm? Lockett and Associates, Lorraine said. I've never heard of them. Ted was careful, but not so careful that he would change the name of his firm. It was a small mistake. That could have cost us a lot. After talking to Lorraine, I called Ted. They've hired a detective, I said without preamble. And a lawyer. Lorraine had noticed the connection to Margaret's name. That's to be expected, Ted replied. Don't worry, the paperwork's in order. The company is legally registered, all taxes paid. They'll need a very good detective to trace the connection. Back to you. What about your company? Lorraine mentioned the name. That's not a problem. I represent hundreds of clients. Margaret Investments is just one of many. I hope you're right, I said. How are things going with the insurance company? They're almost done investigating. Preliminary conclusion is arson. They found traces of accelerant at the origin of the fire. So, there's no payout? Probably not. And what's more, they might turn the case over to the police. Thursday, Willow came to me with an update. Your daughter was here, she said, sitting down, next to me in the garden talking to Principal Ross. About what? About you being here. Asked if she could take you home? The director said it was possible, but it would require a refund of some of the fees you paid. So Lorraine came up with the same idea as Dwight, using the money I paid to the Pines to solve her own problems. What else did she say? She asked about your health, how you were adjusting, the usual questions. But I got the feeling she was interested in something else. Like what? Your financial situation? Willow lowered her voice. She asked if all the necessary paperwork had been signed, especially regarding financial management. The director said, no, that you had delayed signing some of the paperwork. And how did Lorraine react? She wasn't happy. Said she'd talk to you about it. I nodded. Everything was going according to plan. The kids were desperate and looking for any way to get the money. In the evening, Lorraine called, just as Willow had predicted. Dad, I talked to the director of the Pines. She said, you haven't signed all the paperwork yet. What paperwork? The power of attorney for financial management. Dad, this is important. What if something happens to you? Who's going to pay for you to stay there? I'm in perfect health, Lorraine, and I'm capable of managing my own money. Noon saying otherwise. Her voice sounded too hasty. It's just a formality for your own safety. You know, I've been thinking about what Dwight said. I said, changing the subject about moving in with him. Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad idea. I could save money on the Pines. What? Lorraine clearly wasn't expecting that. Dad, you can't live with Dwight. He has a tiny apartment and he's going to be homeless soon. Well, then maybe I could move in with you. You have a big house. That would be difficult, Dad. We have a very busy schedule, the kids, Nolan's work. I understand, I said. So, when you talk about family support, you only mean my money, not actual help. Dad, that's not fair. On the contrary, Lorraine, it's totally fair. You and Dwight insisted I move to the Pines, claiming I couldn't live on my own. But when it comes to me living with one of you, suddenly it's impossible. You don't understand. Her voice trembled. We're in a very difficult situation right now. We could lose everything. The house, Nolan's clinic. We just can't take care of you too. You mean I'm a burden? No, that's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you mean, Lorraine. I'm a liability when it comes to my comfort, but a great asset when it comes to my money. Daddy, please. Her voice softened. We're in a desperate situation. If you sign the power of attorney, we can use some of your savings to solve our problems. We'll pay you back later. I promise. What if we don't have enough? What then? It should be enough, she said confidently. You have insurance on the house, don't you? The insurance company refuses to pay, I said. They suspect arson. There was a long pause. Arson? Her voice sounded strange. Why would they think that? They found traces of accelerant gasoline or something. It's awful, Dad. Who would do something like that? I don't know, Lorraine. I really don't. The next day, Meredith texted, I need to talk to you right away. Willow had arranged for us to meet at Pines' Park in a far corner of the grounds where no one could overhear us. Grandpa, things are getting complicated, Meredith said as soon as we sat down on a bench. Dad and Aunt Lorraine are in a panic. The detective they hired found a connection between Margaret Investments and Mr. Lockett, which is to be expected. Inaudid. What are they planning to do? They're going to go to Mr. Lockett and demand an explanation, and if he doesn't tell them who's behind the company, they're going to threaten to sue him. When are they going to see him? This afternoon. Dad called him and set up a meeting. I have to warn Ted. Grandpa, one more thing. Meredith lowered her voice. I heard Daddy talking to Aunt Lorraine about the fire. They really did it. I froze. Are you sure? Yeah. Dad said if the insurance company goes to the police, they'll have to leave town. Aunt Lorraine said no one could prove anything if they stuck together. So I was right. They did start the fire hoping I'd die in it. My own children. Thank you, Meredith, I said, feeling oddly calm. You did the right thing by telling me. What are you going to do, grandfather? What I have to do, he answered. Get justice. I called Ted and warned him about Dwight and Lorraine's visit. He promised to hold them back, but not to reveal all the information. Let them suffer a little longer. That evening, Willow called. Orrin, you have visitors. Your children. They're, furious. Take them to my room, I said, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Dwight was the first to enter, his face red with anger. Lorraine followed, outwardly calm, but with cold fury in her eyes. You, Dwight jabbed his finger at me. It was you all along. What are you talking about, Dwight? I asked innocently. Don't pretend, he was almost shouting. Margaret Investments. This is your company. You're evicting us? What makes you think that? Lockett had told us everything. Lorraine stepped in. After we threatened to sue for attorney-client privilege, Ted wouldn't give up information that easily, so he decided it was time for the next phase of the plan. Sit down, I said calmly. Let's talk like adults. What was there to talk about? Dwight continued to stand, looming over me. You've been lying to us for years. You pretended to be a poor old man while you owned half the real estate in Bowers. Not half, I corrected him. Just a few buildings, including the ones where we live and work. Lorraine finally let her emotions get the better of her. Dad, how could you? We're your children. And I'm your father, I replied, who you tried to kill by burning down his house. They froze. Dwight turned pale. Lorraine pressed her lips into a thin line. What is this nonsense? Dwight said. We weren't trying to kill anyone. Really? I smiled. That's odd because the insurance company found traces of accelerant in the area where the fire started. And the fire started on the exact day I always leave for my morning walk. The day Mrs. Finch isn't home. A day when no one could have saved me if I had actually been home. It's a coincidence, Dwight muttered. Too many coincidences, don't you think? I shifted my gaze to Lorraine. You were always smarter than your brother, Lorraine. You've calculated everything except the one thing that I might be smarter. Daddy, she tried to pull herself together. You don't understand. We never meant to hurt you. We wanted my money. I finished for her, and we figured the quickest way to get it was to kill me and claim my inheritance. But since killing me outright would have been too obvious, you decided to have an accident. You're crazy, Dwight said, but his voice shook. We love you. We only wanted the best for you. The best? I laughed. You burned down my house, forced me to move into a nursing home, tried to get control of my finances, and that's what you call love. Daddy, please. Lorraine sat down next to me, her voice soft, pleading. We made a mistake. We were desperate. Dwight's in debt. We're having trouble with the mortgage. We thought if you moved to the Pines, you could help us out financially. With their money from the sale of the house, I nodded. The house I built with my own hands. The house where you grew up. The house where your mother died. We didn't want you to get hurt, Dwight exclaimed. We made sure you weren't home before. He paused, realizing what he'd said. Lorraine turned pale. Before you set it on fire, I finished it for him. Thank you for the confession, Dwight. It's very timely. That's not what I meant, he muttered. I misspoke. Of course, in-auded. Anyway, now you know why I'm evicting you. An eye for an eye. A house for a house. After Dwight's confession, there were long days of silence. My children stopped calling and visiting. They'd learned their lesson. Hard, but necessary. I hoped it would make them reflect on what they had done and perhaps realize the depth of their fall. Willow became my window to the world outside of Bowers Pines. She brought news from the city, told me about what was going on with my kids. Dwight selling his car, she announced Thursday, sitting down next to me in the garden. He put an ad on the internet. He's asking half the market price. Apparently, he needs the money fast. And Lorraine Nolan's urgently looking for new premises for the clinic. Rumor has it they might be moving to Ridgewood, the next town over. Rent's cheaper there. He nodded. The plan was working. My children felt what I must have felt. The loss of my home, the uncertainty of the future, the despair. You don't regret what you did? Willow asked, watching my face carefully. I wondered, did I regret it? Part of me did. After all, they were my children, whatever they were. But the other part, the more rational part, realized that sometimes hard lessons were necessary. No, I finally answered. They deserved it. They tried to take away not only my home, but my life. I'm just returning the favor by putting a roof over their heads. But you're not trying to take their lives, Willow said. That's the difference between you and them. Maybe I agreed. Sometimes I think they deserve more punishment, though. But you won't, she said firmly, because you're better than they are. I looked at her gratefully. Willow saw me not just as a vengeful old man, but as a man with principles, even if those principles were hard. Do you think they'll learn their lesson? I asked. I don't know, she shrugged. People don't change easily, especially when they're used to thinking only of themselves, like Dwight and Lorraine. Yeah, but sometimes a crisis can make people reevaluate their values. Maybe losing their home and job will be that crisis for them. Let's hope so, I said, even though I wasn't sure. On Saturday, Meredith came to visit me. She looked haggarded, dark circles under her eyes, a pale face. The events of the last few weeks had taken their toll on her. Grandpa? She hugged me tighter than usual. How are you? Good. Considering the circumstances, I answered. And you? How are you dealing with all this? Meredith sank into the chair across from me and sighed. It's hard. My dad's in terrible shape. He moved in with me temporarily, sleeping on the couch. Head drinks all the time and blames you for all his problems. Typical Dwight. I say it. He's never been able to take responsibility for his actions. Grandpa. I came to apologize, Meredith said suddenly, for Dad and Aunt Lorraine, for what they did to you. You have nothing to apologize for, Meredith. You had nothing to do with what they did. But I'm part of this family. She shook her head. And I'm ashamed of what my family did. Burning down your house. I still can't believe it. How could they? Greed, I answered simply. Greed makes people do terrible things. Did Dad confess to you? Not exactly. It was more of an outburst of emotion, but that's enough. Meredith was silent for a long time, staring out the window. What's going to happen next, Grandpa? She finally asked. Are you going to tell the police? I wondered. It was a question I'd been asking myself for the last few days. No, I answered. I won't. Let the insurance company do their job. If they decide to go to the police, that's their business. I don't want Toby the one to send my kids to jail, whatever they are. Thank you, Meredith whispered. Not for them, but for me. I don't know how I'd cope if my father was behind bars. He's still your father no matter what, I said, and I understand that you love him even knowing what he did. I do, she nodded. It's hard right now, though. He's changed, Grandpa. He's become angry, vindictive, always talking about how he's going to make you pay for what you did. That didn't surprise me. Dwight had always had a flair for the dramatic and never admitted his mistakes. He'll calm down, I said. When he realizes there's no other way out, and if he doesn't, what if he does something even worse? I wondered. It was a real possibility. Dwight could be unpredictable when he was desperate. I don't think he'll go that Far, I answered. But if you see anything suspicious, let me know. Of course, she nodded. Grandfather, I've been meaning to ask. What's going to happen to the inheritance? I know you said you were going to rewrite the will. But don't worry about that, Meredith, I interrupted. I've thought of everything. Part of. My fortune will indeed go to you, but not because you're my spy, but because you're the only one in this family who's kept her integrity. I don't want your money, she repeated. I didn't help you for that. I know, Ismaeled. That's why you'll get it, but not all of it. Most of it's going to a charity, the Bauauers Senior Citizens Fund, and to build a new community center for the city. That's wonderful, Grandpa. She smiled genuinely. Bowers needs a center like that. Yes, it does. I agreed. Margaret had always said that the town lacked a place where people of different generations could come together, where kids could learn from old people and old people could feel needed. We talked for a long time about my life in the Pines, about her studies, about her plans for the future. Meredith wanted to be a social worker like her friend Gemma, helping people who can't help themselves. You'd be a great social worker, I said. You have what it takes to be a social worker. Empathy, patience, and a strong moral compass. Thank you, Grandpa. She smiled. That means a lot to me. When Meredith left, I sat by the window for a long time, reflecting on our conversation. She was a ray of light in our family's dark history, proof that sometimes the apple falls far enough from the tree. On Wednesday of the following week, Ted brought news from the insurance company. They've turned the case over to the police, he said, sitting down across from me. The evidence is too strong to ignore. What does this mean for Dwight and Lorraine? If the police find enough evidence, they could be charged with arson and attempted murder. Those are serious charges, Orrin. They could get real sentences. I sigh. That's what I was afraid of. It's one thing to deprive them of their homes and jobs, and quite another to send them to prison. What can we do? Not much, Ted admitted. It's out of our hands. Unless, you could talk to a detective, say you don't think your kids would do something like that. But that would be a lie. Yeah, Ted agreed. And it's up to you. I'm just imagining the options, I wondered. Could I lie to protect my children? The children who had tried to kill me? Part of me wanted them to get the full measure of what they deserved. But the other part, the more merciful part, reminded me that they were my flesh and blood after all. I'll think about it, I said finally. Thank you, Ted. There's more news, he continued. The notary is ready to come any day to draw up a new will, and I've prepared the paperwork to set up a charitable foundation. That's great. Let's do it tomorrow. Okay? Ted hesitated. Orrin, I have to ask you one more time. Are you sure you want Dwight and Lorraine completely out of the will? It's, the final step. I'm sure. I nodded. They've already learned their lesson with the eviction, but I don't want them to be rewarded with an inheritance. I want the money to go to something good for Meredith in the city. Whatever you say. Ted gathered up his papers. 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Yeah, I'll be waiting. After Ted left, I thought about my conversation with him. Maybe I'd been too hard on my kids. But then I remembered how my house had burned down, how every memory of Margaret, of our life together, had disappeared in the fire. How Dwight and Lorraine had brought me to Bowers Pines, pretending to care, but really only thinking about my money. No, I wasn't being too hard. I was fair, and fairness can be painful sometimes. That evening, Willow called. Orrin, you have visitors, she said with a peculiar intonation. Your children, both of them, they look different. Different. Not angry like last time, more like depressed, especially your son. Show them in, I said, preparing for another round of conversations. They came in quietly, without the same aggression. Dwight looked gaunt, with red eyes and unkempt stubble. Lorraine was paler than usual, her always immaculate hair looking unkempt. Dad, Dwight began in a hoarse voice, we're here to talk. Have a seat, I pointed to the chairs. They sat across from me, looking at each other awkwardly. It was obvious. They were preparing for this conversation. "Dad," Lorraine spoke, we made a terrible mistake. What we did, it's unforgivable." "Yeah, it's unforgivable," I agreed. "But you're not here for forgiveness, are you? You're here because the police are investigating the arson." They looked at each other again. In part, Dwight admitted, Detective Ramirez called us. He asked questions about our whereabouts on the day of the fire, about our relationship with you. "And what did you tell him?" "The truth," Lorraine answered, "that we were in other places. I was at a charity breakfast. Dwight was at a business meeting." "So, you lied," I said, "because you were actually at my house with a can of gasoline?" Dwight lowered his head. "Yes," he whispered. "We lied." That admission surprised me. I didn't expect them to confess so easily. "Why are you telling me the truth now?" "Because we have nowhere to run," Lorraine replied. "We've lost everything. Our house, our jobs, our reputations. Nolan filed for divorce when he found out I was involved in the arson. He took the kids back to his parents in Boston. And I'm living on Meredith's couch," Dwight added. "I sold my car to pay off some of my debts. Creditors are harassing me, threatening to sue me." "And you think I should help you?" I asked. "After all you've done?" "No." Lorraine shook her head. "We don't expect help. We're here to confess and to apologize, even though we know that's not enough." "Apologize?" I raised an eyebrow. "For trying to kill me?" "We didn't mean to kill you," Dwight exclaimed. "We checked to make sure you weren't home. We knew you went for a walk every Thursday morning. What if I had changed my habits? If I had decided to stay home that day?" They were silent, unable to find an answer. "You risked my life for money," I continued. "For a house you could sell. For an insurance policy you could have gotten." "We were desperate," Lorraine whispered. "Dwight was in debt. My marriage was falling apart. There was only one way out. Kill my father and take his money." I finished for her. "That's a great way out, isn't it?" "We deserve to be punished," Dwight said in a suddenly firm voice. "And we got it. You deprived us of everything just like we tried to deprive you. That's fair." I looked at my son carefully. For the first time in a long time, there was something real in his eyes. Realization, remorse, acceptance of responsibility. "What do you want me to do?" I asked him bluntly. "If the police find evidence, they'll arrest us. Lorraine said we could get real sentences." I'm scared of prison, Dad, and I'm worried about my kids. They shouldn't have to grow up knowing their mom's a criminal. You're asking me to lie to the police," I clarified, "to say you couldn't have done it?" "No," Dwight shook his head. "We're asking for an opportunity to redeem myself." In another way, I was intrigued. "In what way?" "Any way you suggest," Lorraine replied. "We'll do whatever you say. Just, help us stay out of jail for the grandkids, for Meredith." I looked at my kids. For a long time, they looked genuinely remorseful, broken, ready to accept any punishment other than jail time. Perhaps they had truly learned a lesson from this situation. "I can't stop the investigation," I said finally. "But I can talk to the detective. Tell him I don't believe you were involved in the arson. It might help if there's no direct evidence." "Thanks, Dad." Lorraine exhaled. "But," I continued, "I have conditions. 3 conditions." "What are they?" Dwight asked. "First, you both have to go to therapy. Long term, at least a year. I'll pay for it." They nodded without objecting. "Second, you'll work for a charity I'm setting up. No salary, just room and board as volunteers. Dwight will be doing construction work, renovating the homes of the elderly. Lorraine will organize activities for lonely old people." "We agree," Lorraine said without hesitation. Dwight nodded. "And third," I paused, "you must publicly confess what you did. Not the arson that could get you arrested, but that you tried to manipulate me to force me to sell the house and move to the Pines against my will. To confess to everyone you know in Bowers. It was the hardest condition of all. Public humiliation, losing face in front of the whole town. Dwight and Lorraine always cared about their reputations, especially Lorraine, who aspired to the high society of Bowers. "It's complicated," Dwight muttered. "But fair," Lorraine said suddenly. "We agree, Dad, on all terms." I looked at my daughter with a new respect. Maybe there was something of Margaret left in her, after all, the ability to admit her mistakes and accept the consequences. "Okay," I nodded. "Then I'll talk to Detective Ramirez. But keep in mind, if there's direct evidence fingerprints on the canister witnesses, I can't help you." "We understand," Dwight said. "I thank you, Dad. You have every right to turn your back on us after what we've done." "You're me, children," I said simply. "Whatever you are." After they left, I called Ted and told him about our conversation. "Are you sure they're sincere?" he asked doubtfully. "It could be another manipulation." "Maybe," I agreed. "But I want to give them a chance. One last chance." "You were always softer than you wanted to appear," Ted said with a smile in his voice. Margaret knew it. Yes, I smiled at the memory. She always saw right through me. The next day, Ted brought a notary and we signed a new will. I'd made a change, not excluding Dwight and Lorraine completely, but leaving them a small portion of the inheritance, provided they worked at least 5 years for the charity. The bulk still went to Meredith and the city of Bowers to build a community center. I also talked to Detective Ramirez as promised. Told him that despite our differences, I didn't believe my kids could have set the house on fire. He listened carefully, took notes, but made no promises. "We are following the evidence, Mr. Caldwell," he said, "but your opinion will be considered." A week later, Meredith brought unexpected news. "Grandfather, you won't believe it. The police have arrested Victor Sloan for setting your house on fire." "Victor Sloan?" I was genuinely surprised. "The owner of the auto repair shop?" "Yeah. Turns out he'd been wanting to buy your lot for years to expand his business. You refused to sell, so he decided to speed things up. But how did they find him?" "They found a canister with his prints on it near the fire, and some witness saw his car outside your house that morning." I was stunned. All this time, I was convinced that Dwight and Lorraine set the fire. Their behavior, the coincidences, the circumstantial evidence, everything pointed to them and their confession. Did they take the fall for someone else's crime? "Are you sure it's true?" I asked Meredith. "Could it be a mistake?" Sloan confessed. "Grandpa completely said he didn't mean to kill anyone, just wanted you to sell the lot after the fire." I leaned back in my chair, trying to comprehend this information. So Dwight and Lorraine hadn't set my house on fire. They were guilty of wanting to use the fire to their advantage, of trying to manipulate me and gain control of my finances, but not the arson. "I need to talk to them," I told Meredith immediately. Dwight and Lorraine arrived an hour later. They looked confused, not understanding why I'd called them surgently. "Victor Sloan," I said without preamble. He'd been arrested for burning down my house. They looked at each other, a look of genuine surprise on their faces. "Victor Sloan?" Lorraine asked. "The one from the auto shop?" "Yeah," I nodded. "He confessed he wanted me to sell the lot after the fire, but Dwight hesitated. We thought that you did it. I finished for him, and you admitted it to me." "Why?" Again, the long look between brother and sister. "Because we felt guilty," Lorraine finally said. "We didn't start the fire, but we wanted your house to burn down. We talked about it, we planned it. We just didn't have time to do it. And when the house did burn down," Dwight continued, "we decided it was a sign, an opportunity to get what we wanted. The money from the sale of the lot, your move to the Pines. We were so preoccupied with our own problems that we didn't even think about the possibility that someone else might have done it," Lorraine admitted. "When you blamed us, we just accepted the blame because in our hearts, we were guilty." I looked at my children and saw something in them that I hadn't noticed before, the capacity for remorse. They were willing to take the blame for a crime they hadn't committed because they knew in their hearts that they deserved to be punished for their intentions. You know, I said after a long pause, Margaret has always believed that there is good in everyone, even in the most misguided souls. I often argued with her, saying that some people were just hopeless. She would reply, "No one is hopeless, Oren. Some just need more time to find their way." Lorraine's eyes filled with tears. "She always saw the best in us," she whispered, "even when we didn't see it ourselves." "Yes," I agreed. "And maybe she was right. Maybe there really is something worthwhile in you.